I've spent the past month interning at the Japan Times newspaper in Tokyo, and it's been such a valuable experience for me to gain some practical experience in the journalism workplace. Working in a different country is a really valuable experience for any journalist or journalism student. As a journalist, you really have to consider your audience when you're writing your story. So in another country, you have a completely different audience to write for. So you get to do stories that you may never get to do in Australia. In Japan, it's been particularly interesting because I've got to do some really quirky stories. I've written about a sweets marathon where people do a fun run and then eat sweets along the way. And I've written about an anime festival, which is really cool. So it's really interesting to write in another country and get a whole nother perspective and a different audience to write for. There are some difficulties that come with working overseas. For example, the language barrier. I don't speak Japanese, and so even though this is an English-speaking newspaper, a lot of the sources that you rely on for your information are written in Japanese, so you have to rely on Google Translate, which can give you some pretty sketchy translations, but you just have to learn to pick out the important things and use them for your stories. It also might be slightly harder to relate to a Japanese audience. I mean, I've grown up in Australia, so I can relate with an Australian audience really easily, but it makes it a little bit harder to know what people want to read over here. Apart from the international aspect, it's also really great to get experience in an actual newsroom. You learn things at university, but it's so different when you're working in a real workplace. For example, accuracy. When the public are going to be reading your stories really need to be accurate and all the information needs to be correct. And also things like spelling and grammar. Editors don't have time to deal with poor spelling and grammar and stylistic issues, so you need to make sure you get that correct. I've also got the chance to use a lot of tools we've learned about at university, such as Storify, which has been really cool to get that experience. It's also been really interesting to observe the use of social media in the newsroom. We've always learned about social media and how you can use it, but it's been really cool to monitor certain social media sites such as Twitter during breaking news stories, and that's been really cool to watch the newsroom in those certain circumstances. Even apart from working, it's just really great to get to live in another country. You learn about how other people live, and this can really open up your mind, which can help you as a journalist even once you get back to Australia.